My name is Essie Wright. I'm 32 years old. I was standing in the checkout line at a hardware store, holding a box of LED light bulbs and a chrome shower head I didn't actually need, when my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. Mom. I didn't answer. That alone should tell you how exhausted I was. The cashier was asking the guy ahead of me if he wanted to donate $1 to a school fundraiser. I stared at the scuffed counter, feeling that familiar pressure behind my eyes, the one that came from always being needed and never being rested. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail. I pressed play, half listening. "Hi, sweetheart," my mom said, her voice bright in that way that always meant she was about to soften a blow. "Just calling to let you know we're having dinner at the house tonight, but, don't come by." I stiffened. "It's not personal, really," she continued quickly. "It's just that Vanessa feels uncomfortable around you. You understand, right? Anyway, we'll talk later. Love you. Beep." I blinked, rewound it, played it again, slower this time. Vanessa, my younger brother Ethan's girlfriend of 5 months. The woman who'd asked me last month if my job in construction management was a long-term thing or just until something better came along. The same woman who wore tailored coats to casual family barbecues and once described our childhood home as quaint in a rustic way. 3 weeks earlier, I had taken out a $91,000 personal loan to save that exact house from foreclosure. I stood there long enough that the cashier cleared her throat. I mumbled an apology, left my basket on the counter, and walked out of the store without buying a damn thing. In my truck, I sat with the engine off, replaying the voicemail until the shock burned itself into something heavier. Something permanent. 3 weeks ago, my parents had been days away from losing their home. Their retirement savings were gone, wiped out, by an investment my father refused to talk about. They were 5 months behind on the mortgage. The bank wasn't bluffing anymore. Mom had called me in tears. Dad had been silent, pride hardening his voice. I drained my savings, liquidated the down payment I'd been saving for my own condo, the one I'd been dreaming about for 2 years. I signed a 5-year loan that made my stomach churn every time I looked at the numbers. When the payment went through, Mom cried. Dad grunted. Ethan sent a thumbs up emoji. And now? I wasn't welcome at dinner because his girlfriend didn't like me. I stared at the steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the loan app. Cancel automatic payments. Revoke linked bank access. Delete saved recipients. Each tap felt strangely calm, like muscle memory finally doing something for me instead of everyone else. Next, I opened my Notes app, the one I'd used for years to track every single payment I'd made under the quiet banner of family responsibility. Mortgage help, utility top-ups, car repairs, groceries, emergency transfers, covering Ethan's overdraft, again and again. 204 receipts. I scrolled to the bottom. Select all. Delete. Then I opened my messages and replied to my mother's voicemail with 2 words. Copy that. That was the moment something inside me snapped clean in half. I wasn't always this woman. I used to be the daughter who said yes before the question finished forming. The one who Venmo'd $600 when Mom's card declined at the pharmacy. The one who dropped everything when Dad's engine died on the freeway. I was the sister who lent Ethan $4,300 for a security deposit after he accidentally overdrew his account. The one who paid for the ski trip Vanessa insisted on because it would be good for Ethan's mental health. It wasn't always like this. Or maybe it was, and I just hadn't had the language for it yet. Growing up, Ethan was the golden one, the dreamer, the potential. Ethan, who crashed 2 cars before he was 21 and still got a brand new Audi for his 25th birthday. I was the practical one. The girl with calloused hands at 16, working summers on roofing crews and winters stacking shelves to pay for community college. I graduated debt-free. No one threw a party. 6 weeks ago, when Mom called asking for help with the house, it was the same script she'd always used. Sugar wrapped around a rusted blade. "Sweetheart, I hate to even ask," she'd said. "We're just in a tight spot. The bank is being unreasonable, and you know how your father is. How much is a bit? I asked. Silence, then a breath. 89,000. But with interest, it's closer to 91. I should have laughed. I should have hung up. Instead, I took a second job that night, called my bank the next morning, signed my future away with a pen that felt heavier than it should have. 3 days later, the mortgage was current. The roof over their heads was secure, and 3 weeks later, I was told not to come to dinner. I found out about the dinner again later through Instagram. Vanessa posted a filtered story with the caption, "Family dinner nights are everything. So grateful." In the background was the dining room I'd paid to save. Dad carving a roast, Mom pouring wine, Ethan laughing. At the edge of the frame, my chair, empty. They hadn't even tried to hide it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat in my truck, phone dark in my lap, and realized something with terrifying clarity. I wasn't family to them. I was infrastructure. And infrastructure is invisible until it fails. The first call came the next morning. I was already at work, hard hat tucked under my arm, reviewing a site report when my phone buzzed across the metal desk. Mom. I flipped it face down and kept reading. 5 minutes later, again. Then Ethan. By noon, my phone looked like it was vibrating out of sheer panic. I didn't answer. Instead, I went back to the Instagram story. Vanessa's caption was still there. Family dinner nights are everything. I stared at the photo longer than I wanted to admit. The roast looked perfect. The table was set with placemats I'd bought years ago. Even the overhead light, replaced last winter after it shorted out, was one I'd paid for. And my chair sat empty, pulled back slightly, like it had been considered and dismissed. That hurt more than the voicemail. I finally called Ethan during my lunch break, not because I expected an apology, but because I needed to hear what excuse he'd manufacture. He picked up on the third ring. "Hey, S," he said casually. "What's up?" I closed my eyes. "Did you tell Vanessa I was radioactive or something?" There was a pause. A short laugh that didn't quite land. "Come on, don't be dramatic." "Was it her idea to uninvite me?" I asked. "Or Mom's?" Another pause, longer this time. "You've just been kind of intense lately," he said. "Always tired. Vanessa picks up on stuff like that. She's really empathetic." Empathetic. I let that word hang between us. "So I took out a $91,000 loan," I said slowly. "So your empathetic girlfriend could sip red wine in a house that wasn't hers." Silence. Then Ethan exhaled. "You didn't have to do that, S. You offered." Something in my chest went cold. "I offered," I repeated, "because Dad was days from losing the house. Because Mom said she'd have a breakdown if they had to move. Because you can barely afford your own life, let alone help them." Okay, he said quickly. "Calm down. It's not that deep. You've always been the stable one. We all rely on you." "I'm not a tool, Ethan." He scoffed lightly. "No one said you were. They never do." I hung up without saying goodbye and blocked his number. Then Mom's. Then Dad's. It felt drastic. Final. It also felt like breathing. That afternoon, I logged into everything they'd ever had access to. My Costco account, the shared family calendar, the emergency credit card that was supposedly for household essentials, but somehow always showed Uber Eats and spa charges. Closed. Revoked. Deleted. 2 days later, the mortgage payment bounced. That's when the panic started. Dad called 4 times in one day. Mom left voicemails that swung wildly between sobbing and sweetness. "Essie, sweetheart, please call us back. This is getting serious. We don't understand why you're doing this." I understood perfectly. That night, I printed everything. Every receipt, every transfer, every bill I'd covered under the unspoken contract of being the responsible daughter. The printer jammed twice. I fixed it. Of course I did. I stacked the pages into a thick pile and slid them into a manila envelope. On a yellow sticky note, I wrote, "Since you like records, here's mine." I mailed it the next morning. 3 days after that, my phone exploded. Missed calls, texts, FaceTimes. "Mom, this is too far. You're hurting the family." "Dad, This petty behavior isn't helping anyone. Grow up and call your mother. Ethan, dude, what is this? Dad's freaking out. That last one almost made me laugh. Almost. I didn't respond. Instead, that night, I drove to the house. The one I'd saved. The one that still had my name attached to it in places they pretended not to see. I parked across the street and sat there longer than necessary. Warm light glowed through the windows. Vanessa's decorative pumpkins lined the porch. The doormat still read, "Home is where the heart is." I knocked once. Ethan opened the door barefoot, beer in hand, wearing joggers like he lived there permanently. "Oh," he said. "You could have texted first." I walked past him. Mom was in the kitchen pouring wine. Dad sat on the couch, arms crossed, posture rigid like a guard dog protecting territory he hadn't earned. Vanessa wasn't there. Convenient. Standing in the center of the living room, I spoke calmly, but loud enough that no one could pretend not to hear. "If I'm your ATM," I said, "the least you could do is offer me a seat at the table." Dad snorted. "Don't start with that victim talk. You wanted to help. That was your choice." "Yes," I said evenly. "And now I've changed my mind." Ethan paced behind me. "We didn't mean to hurt you. You excluded me from my own house." Mom stepped forward, hands shaking. "It was just a misunderstanding." "Then this," I said, pulling another envelope from my jacket and dropping it on the coffee table, "is just a correction." Dad opened it. His face flushed. "Loan cancellation notice. Utility cosign withdrawal. A letter from my lawyer ending financial power of attorney." Ethan blinked. "Wait, what is this?" "Freedom," I said. Dad stood abruptly. "You're really going to let your family fall apart after everything we've done for you?" I laughed then. A short, sharp sound. "Done for me?" I asked. "You mean using me until I finally noticed?" Mom started crying. I turned toward the door. "This is the last conversation we're having about money," I said, "and the last time you'll see me beg for basic respect." Ethan followed me onto the porch. We're blood." I looked at him under the porch light. Really looked at him. "No," I said. "Blood doesn't bleed you dry, and call it love." I got in my truck and drove away. They didn't apologize. They didn't think I meant it. They thought, like always, I'd come back. They still didn't believe me. That was the part that surprised me most. Even after I walked out of that house, even after I handed them paperwork that literally spelled out my exit, they were convinced, deep down, that I'd fold, that I'd cool off, that I'd come back once the panic passed, because I always had. The first sign they were wrong came 4 days later, when the bank sent formal notices. Dad left me a voicemail that time. Not anger, not pride, fear. "Essie," he said, voice low and strained. "We need to talk. This isn't funny anymore." I deleted it. Mom tried a different angle. She texted photos, old ones, holidays, birthdays, a picture of me at 10, missing 2 teeth, smiling like I belonged. "Remember this?" she wrote. "Families don't do this to each other." I stared at the images for a long time before replying. Families don't uninvite the person who saved their home. After that, the messages shifted again. Guilt, bargaining, blame. Dad emailed me with the subject line, "Let's talk like adults." I didn't answer. 2 weeks after I left that house, the mortgage officially defaulted. I found out not because they told me, but because Ethan showed up at my job. I was eating lunch in the back of my truck, legs dangling over the bumper, when his shadow fell across the pavement. He looked different. Thinner. Tired. The golden ease he'd always carried was gone, replaced by something brittle. "They lost the house," he said without preamble. I took a sip of water. "I know." "They're staying with Aunt Marlene," he added. "Dad's not doing great. Mom barely sleeps." I waited. "They're scared, S." I looked at him then. Really looked. "You know what scared feels like?" I asked quietly. "It's lying awake at 3 a.m, wondering how you're going to pay for someone else's crisis. It's realizing your future disappeared without anyone even asking." He rubbed his face. "Mom says you're punishing everyone, says it's cruel." "Cruel?" I echoed. "I gave up my condo, my savings, my 20s, For people who couldn't even offer me a chair at dinner. Silence stretched between us. Vanessa left, he said finally. That landed harder than I expected. Not with satisfaction, but clarity. Did she? I asked. She said the situation was unstable, he muttered. Too much negativity. I almost smiled. Dad says you betrayed us, Ethan continued, but he hesitated. I think he knows, deep down. He knows he lost the only one holding everything together. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That night, I signed the lease on a studio apartment I'd been quietly watching for months. Exposed brick, a single skylight. No guest room. No expectations. No family noise. Moving in felt strange. Quiet in a way that was almost uncomfortable. The first night, I slept with the light on. My body braced for an emergency call that never came. By the third night, I slept through until morning. Real sleep, the kind I hadn't had in years. Weeks passed. The calls slowed, then stopped. Ethan tried once more, sending a long message about forgiveness and starting over. I didn't reply. Mom stopped texting altogether. Then one afternoon, I ran into Aunt Marlene at the grocery store. She looked at me the way people do when they don't know whose side they're supposed to be on. Your mother hasn't stopped crying, she said gently. I won't be coming back, I replied, just as gently. That seemed to end the conversation. Life, quietly, began to rebuild itself. I got certified, took on better contracts, hired help, took my first solo vacation. Nothing fancy, just a few days where no one needed me for anything. No emergencies, no guilt, no sudden transfers at midnight. One eve, you don't know me, but I'm Vanessa's ex. I stared at the screen. She ruined me, the message continued. Reading what you went through felt familiar. You were right to walk away. That takes guts. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a screenshot and sent it to Ethan. No caption. That night, lying in my quiet apartment, I realized something that finally settled the story in my chest. I wasn't the villain. I was the escape artist. I didn't abandon my family. I escaped a trap dressed up as love. They had chances, over and over again. They chose comfort, silence, entitlement. I chose peace. And for the first time in my adult life, it felt like the right choice. The strangest part wasn't losing them. It was how quiet everything became once I did. No late night calls, no quick favors, no emergencies that weren't actually emergencies at all. At first, the silence felt unnatural, like standing in a room after a fire alarm shuts off, your ears ringing, your body still braced for impact. I kept my phone nearby out of habit, charging it fully every night, just in case. Just in case of what? I wasn't sure anymore. The house was gone within the month. The bank moved faster once the default stacked up. My parents didn't tell me. Word traveled the long way around through relatives who spoke carefully, like grief might be contagious. Dad's health dipped. Mom withdrew. Ethan bounced between couches. I felt bad. That's the part no one talks about. How relief and grief can coexist in the same breath. But guilt? That didn't stick the way it used to. Because every time it tried to settle in, another memory surfaced. The empty chair, the voicemail, the way my contribution became invisible the moment it was inconvenient. I stopped apologizing to myself. My studio became my sanctuary. I bought a cheap rug and a couch that actually fit the space. I framed nothing from my childhood. No family photos, no reminders of who I used to be for them. I started building something that was just mine. Work picked up fast once I had energy again. Funny how capable you become when you're not carrying everyone else's weight. I expanded my contracts, hired a small team, and for the first time, turned down jobs because I could, not because I was exhausted. One afternoon, months later, Ethan showed up again. This time, he didn't ask for anything. He looked older. Not aged, just stripped of entitlement. I'm moving out of state, he said. Got a job. Nothing fancy. That's good, I replied. He nodded. I wanted to say, I get it now. Not all of it, but enough. I waited. I'm sorry, he added quietly, for letting you carry everything. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't accountability wrapped in a bow, but it was real. Take care of yourself, I said. He smiled sadly. You too. That was the last time I saw him. Mom sent one final message near the holidays. I hope you're well. No guilt, no demands, just words. I replied with the same. Time did what time always does. It created distance where there used to be pain sharp enough to cut. One night, sitting on my couch with a glass of wine I'd poured purely because I wanted it, I thought about the girl I used to be, the dependable one, the fixer, the one who believed love meant sacrifice without limits. I wished I could reach back and tell her the truth sooner, that love doesn't ask you to disappear, that loyalty without respect is just obligation, that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're instructions. I used to think walking away made me selfish. Now I know better. I wasn't cruel. I was courageous. I didn't destroy my family. I stopped enabling them to destroy me. To anyone reading this who is the responsible one, the fallback, the safety net, the walking solution to everyone else's problems, hear me clearly. You are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are not heartless for stepping back. You are not a villain for saying enough. Sometimes love isn't staying. Sometimes love is leaving before there's nothing left of you to save. I finally chose myself. And for the first time in my life, I'm living.